What is your freedom worth to you? Each of our guests had a light bulb moment. They longed to live rather than merely exist. They smashed through their fears and programmed minds, trusting themselves, their faith, and their survival instincts, leaving the guilt, fear, oppression, and drudgery of their past for a brighter future. They took a brave and courageous step into freedom. This is their story of how they got a life. Welcome to Get a Life podcast, X-Cult Conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hello, everyone. We are back with Abi for part 3. And I'm going to just hand the mic right over to Abi, and we're going to dive right into this as she goes through another slideshow presentation. Welcome, Abi.
Hi there.
Away.
Thank you so much. So Cheryl had to leave our last podcast, so I wanted to catch up with her on this part of the podcast and go through some of the points with her so that we also have her opinion, which we can add into the main podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I share screen.
So we're just going to merge 2 different podcasts together into this one and make it a very full podcast.
That's the one, because it's important.
It is. This is very important stuff.
Which, bear with me, because I've tried to put this as structured as possible, so it's clear for those that haven't had anything to do with the Brethren. I've tried to make it clear so they can get a grasp of this organisation. Yeah. So I've created this structure, and I thought it was really important to create this structure because Brethren don't quite realise what they are part of. In my belief, the whole of the Brethren system is just a big, fat, juicy business plan. And it's really clever how it's been done, because everything is made to look like it's for the benefit of the Brethren. But actually, in real life, it's benefiting one person and one family. And we've touched on it before about how some of the family are buying $8-9 million houses. Where do you get that much free cash from? Well, here it is. We speak about how the houses are successful businessmen and they're good at business. Well, this is how good they are at, because they've completely fleeced 50-odd thousand people into their system, which they're now calling an ecosystem, for their own benefit. It's just mind-blowing. It's so clever. So along the top, we have, at the top, we have Bruce Hales, whose code name actually in the Brethren is the CEO. So if there's seminars where he may be talking and there's a potential non-Brethren member there, he will be referred to as the CEO. Or amongst children at school, if they are talking about Bruce Hales and want to do it covertly in front of the teachers, they will talk about the CEO. So it's not just a name that I've put there, it's also a code name for what people inside the Brethren think he is to a worldly person, if that makes sense. So under him, we've got his sons and his family's businesses and the profit they're making from that. So he's got that he can dip into. They've all got successful businesses, and they oversee all the other top lines. So we've got the profit from UBT. UBT is the brethren hub, so to speak. So if I go to the next slide briefly, so it's where brethren members only buy most of their household services. So you've got your home insurance, your car insurance, you can buy your cars there, you can buy your broadband packages, your travel insurance, your business insurance, trade credit insurance. Now, I don't actually know what that is, but anyway, travel insurance. There's a Fuel Our Schools initiative, which I just found out today. From the rebate, they are making 7 million. So far, they've made £7 million just in fuel rebate in that Fuel Our Schools initiative.
Wow.
That's the kind of money that
is that just in the UK?
I'm not sure. I presume so, but I'm not sure.
So
And
when
then-
you're in the Brethren and you're buying these facilities from UBT, which we all need, home insurance and car insurance and obviously groceries,
Yeah.
do the Brethren believe that going to the shop and buying that is for a good cause? So they will go there because they think if they spend their money there, it's going to a good cause rather than spending their money in Tesco's or buying independent insurance.
Yeah, and there's a certain guilt that comes with that. So people that can't afford to shop at the school shop because the prices are so inflated, you know, they feel guilty about that. And that's cruel. It's not fair.
Yeah. It also takes away somebody's freedom of choice, doesn't it? Because the whole cycle of what they've set up there. So they've got these independent schools that Brethren children have to go to, although the Brethren say they don't have to, they choose to go to them. They have to go to. So if you took your child out of school and put them in a mainstream school, that would ridicule you in the eyes of the Brethren, I imagine. So there's a sort of cycle, ever increasing circle going on here. Then in order to pay for them, you then have to go shopping for all your goods at this particular shop and all your facilities from this particular company. And you're doing it because you think, but what is the purpose behind the schools? The purpose behind the schools is to keep the children separate.
Yes.
And actually, they could just send their children to a mainstream school and educate them to keep themselves out of things that will harm them and not be done with all that.
Yes. And this is another reason why children get so involved in things that will harm them.
Yeah.
Because they're so sheltered for it that when you start to, you know, look into those kind of things, they go far too deep. I mean, you look at the amount of young Brethren lads that have been convicted of, thankfully convicted. I mean, this is the ones that we know of, that have been convicted of having child abuse and child pornography. And images. You know, it's scary. Once you start poking that nest, you know, you're going to get bitten because there's such strict boundaries put down on children. They don't know what the limit is.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
And they've not been taught, have they? And also thinking back to what you said earlier, Abi, about sexual abuse. In a mainstream school, children are taught from a young age, delicately taught about boundaries.
Yes.
And there's certain parts of your body that you would not expect an adult to touch.
Yes.
So they kind of grow up with that knowledge that actually if that happens, that's not right and I need to go and tell mummy or daddy.
Yes.
So none of that is taught, is it?
No.
No.
I mean, I've taught my child that.
Yeah.
That's you know, age appropriately.
Yes, of course it's and it's done delicately and sensitively.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And following on from that, sex education as a whole isn't taught either.
No. Well, very limited.
Very limited, yeah.
I remember when I was at school, I was like, right, we're talking about this, you know, and with the background of what I went through, I was like, okay, so how does sex actually happen? And obviously our sex education lessons were supervised by a Brethren woman. We split into boys and girls, and then the girls were supervised by a sister, and the boys were supervised by a brother whilst the science teacher taught it. And I was like, okay, so how does it actually happen? And this sister from the corner said,
don't worry, Abby, you'll learn about the birds and the bees. I was like, when you need to. And I was like, oh my days, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
That just sums it up, really, doesn't it?
And then you've got your broadband and phone packages. And by phone packages, the prices are just extortionate. Like I didn't have a UBT phone for about the last 6 years when I was in there. I don't think I even had a UBT phone when I got married. Yeah, so maybe 7 years even. But I paid $25.99 a month for unlimited text, unlimited data, and unlimited calls.
My husband was he like had a UBT phone for quite a while, because he was like, well, we might as well, we don't give in any other ways, let's pay for our phone bills through them. That was back in his brainwashed days. And he'd get a phone bill through, and it's £300-400
a month.
A month.
Sure.
I know. On my UBT phone, I used to pay about, I think it was 30 quid a month, and you got about 1,000 minutes of talk time.
I'm guessing that was pre-data times.
Yeah.
But £30 for 1,000 minutes of talk, even that's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous.
You were paying for that. You had a separate charge for the handset as well.
Yeah.
You bought the handset.
But you paid for the handset, for the data, for the minutes.
And Streamline 3 software.
Yeah, I mean, when I left, that I'm a little bit out of date, but I think the most you could get at the time was like 500 megabytes of data.
Wow.
When you look at it now, and you can get unlimited data.
Yeah.
It's just, and the amount you were paying for it.
And also you've got the Streamline 3 software on, so that's how they justify the high prices, that you've got the protection on there, and we're keeping you safe. So the internet is restricted, so you can't get on websites that you would on a non-UBT phone / laptop / tablet, whatever.
It's just completely ridiculous.
When me and Bruce were in a relationship, like way back, as in before we were married, when I was living in Leamington, I racked up about a $2,000 bill on a UBT phone. Just from talking to Bruce. And thankfully I didn't pay it.
Yeah.
That was the probably one of the only positives about living at a rich person's house. However, I was brought through like a wad of paper and asked to name every single number that was on there of numbers that I'd called.
Yeah,
it was all about control.
Yeah,
and messages. Every message with a UBT phone will go through their server, so every message can be tracked, every call can be tracked. And people say that's rubbish. No, I got those pieces of paper handed to me in a folder with every number I'd called, every number I'd texted. So it is true. So those that are wanting to leave, please get a non-UBT phone, because you will be being tracked. I mean, even the children's laptops at school, they've put software on them where it takes a screenshot every so many seconds, so that what the children are doing at school is monitored throughout the day, and then like some form of data recap kind of thing is sent to the parents for the parents to check through. They haven't even got, they're clamping down so much on freedom. And again, this is why kids are getting involved in things that even non-brethren kids would never even dream of.
Yeah, because everything's forbidden.
Yeah. And is it right also, Abby, that the Streamline 3 tracks everything you're doing as well?
Yes. So they've got two options on the Streamline 3. Oh, thanks, Jackie.
That's okay.
They've got two options on the Streamline 3. I'm going like this because I can visualize it. I've got visual memory. And they've got Streamline 3, and then they've got something else underneath, which like opens the computer up a little bit more. You have to have a username and a password.
Okay.
And Safe Search.
I remember that, yeah.
So that opens the computer a little bit more. And then the person whose name that is, so it'll be like, I don't know, Bob dot whatever, Bob Jones, and then it'll be your password. The person whose name that is, then they have access on a system where you can actually input safe websites yourself within reason, obviously, because it's still being monitored by UBT and the Streamline 3 software. So you've got the two options of how open you want the internet to be. When I was in the Brethren, the Safe Search you could get onto YouTube. Hence, these podcasts going onto YouTube is amazing. You know, most Brethren now have access to YouTube. Hence, the kids, they know what Peppa Pig is, and they know what Linkin Paw Patrol is because they watch videos, which is different to years and years ago, where you know you wouldn't. It's really confusing as well because John Hale said that he would never have a mobile phone, and then you know the Lord has turned a corner, and everyone's got a phone, everyone's got a laptop, everyone's got a computer, and now we've got like these big screens in our houses. I'm still associating myself with them, but you know it's not been long. Most people have got a screen, you know, this sort of size in their house. And we had a supper in that lounge with that screen.
But is that so that the Zoom meetings can be enjoyed? Is that so kind of what the big screens on?
That's
I remember I'm going back a long time now, probably 10 years or more, talking to a teacher in a mainstream school, and she had young Brethren children in her school, sort of when one school global was just secondary school age, and she remembers a father of one of these children, and I know him because he was in our meeting, coming in and vehemently explaining why his child must not touch the computer in the classroom. This would have been, you know, sort of early 90s probably. And she said he was absolutely vehement, you know, so they had to obviously exempt all the children from anything with technology or anything like that. So there's been a few corners turned, hasn't there?
There has. Yeah. It must be dizzy, man.
Absolutely.
In the late 80s, I was like in not primary school, like in the junior school. And I literally had they had a computer class, and I literally had to stand up and say, I can't touch that because I love the Lord Jesus. And I felt such a fool.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
Then that's when the bullying starts.
Yes. Because you singled yourself out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very, very brave to stand up and say that, I think, Ross.
My life, I'd never do that.
Yeah. Abi,
I remember.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
I remember at school, I was a little sneak. This was primary school, and they were watching a film called Over the Hedge. And I told my mum, you know, it's about hedges. It's educational, and we were allowed to watch educational videos. So I was like, yes, it's fine. And then the teacher caught me watching it, and she took me out because obviously my parents had said no. But I remember not to watch videos. Well,
if I go back to the other slide. Yes, here. Then you've got the school shop. So you've got the profits from the school shop, and this predominantly, well, how they say it is this goes towards the running of the schools. I remember watching a video on Campus & Co, and there's two children at a blackboard, and one of the children's written "our school shop," and then an adult has has done an arrow up to the One School Global badge. So they're indoctrinating the children from young that the school shops are for the schools. And a lot of the school shop staff is volunteer work, and a lot of, well, I don't know if any of them were paid, to be honest. Any of the people, I've never heard of anyone being paid for anything they do in the school shops. So the general running is all done by volunteer Brethren housewives. So this is a way of keeping the wives a bit happier and feeling like they're some use other than just cleaning toilets and kitchens and bedrooms and washing and etc. They've got an incentive to not get disgruntled about life in the Brethren, because Bruce Hales used to say that he knew how hard, I forget the word he used, something like mundane being a Brethren housewife is. And I was like, yeah, so this has been introduced to keep them happy. So that's that sector quiet. The purchasing teams, they're not paid. And the marketing, there's WhatsApp groups for the school shop and which marketing is sent out on. You also have emails sent out almost daily. You've got webinars where every school shop will come together as a whole and have a webinar about Campus & Co. And then what else have I put? Oh yes, the fundraiser events. So these raise thousands of pounds, or the profit is thousands of pounds rather than raising. Well, I suppose it is a fundraiser, isn't it? So yeah. They are raising. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thousands of pounds per event. And they'll cook breakfast, they'll have extra activities for children, they'll do this, they'll do that, all at the same time of creating extra revenue for the school shop. They've beginning of COVID, they set up an online gifting portal. So you could send gifts to any locality, any household in the world, in the Brethren world, obviously. And this could be flowers, meal kits, vouchers, you name it, they'd thought of it. And that was another thing that kept it going throughout COVID when we couldn't actually visit the shops. Then we've got the donation-based wealth. So this is where it's a bit difficult to explain because there's so many different sectors. But you've got the Grace Trust, you've got the Endowment Fund, which is also known as Vision Welfare inside the Brethren. So for those that are struggling, or for those that are less wealthy than the rest of them, and they've got to keep up the Brethren lifestyle, they can dip into the Endowment Fund. And Brethren are aware that the Endowment Fund also has been set up to have as a backup in the event that the whole world crashes. So mortgages will be paid off, loans will be paid off, all from this endowment fund. And to put it into perspective, there was a seminar at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I forget which, I think it was the end of last year, where they raised £500 million within a week. That's the kind of money that is it's free cash. And they're so sucked in by the system that they're putting it straight into this endowment fund. And then after that, 2 of Bruce Hales' children brought 9 million, 8 million Australian dollar houses. Cash, yeah. And for me, I can't compute that people are that thick to not put 2 and 2 together. But Brethren are so naive, they wouldn't even think that. And I think that's really sad.
And you were still in there when that all went down. Like, were you able to see through that when they were purchasing these houses? That wow,
And a lot of people did, to be honest, but they're too scared to do anything about it because they've got their whole livelihood at risk. You know, this is called the Brethren ecosystem. And I'll just refer to one of the other slides. So the goal is to become a self-sustaining community. And this is they've put this is everyone's goal. So if you're in there and you're part of this ecosystem and then you question it and the threat is there to be kicked out, that is your world, that is your ecosystem. So to people inside, that's really freaking scary, because it's put into you that you're going to fail, you're going to die, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. So for the risk of questioning to then be kicked out, it's not worth it for some people. For us, absolutely, because we want to live the life of honesty, integrity, and I don't want to rely on anyone. I never have. I've always done. I'm a survivor. I do most things myself. Obviously, there's some things that you need help with.
And you know, it's quite interesting that they use the word ecosystem, because when you think of an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem holds itself together by multiple pieces. And if you start taking out of these pieces, the ecosystem no longer can thrive. And like in an ecosystem, I mean, in this ecosystem, there's hierarchy, right? There's the top, and then there's the bottom feeders, right? If there is enough of you inside that stand up and realize that you're not getting the best part of this ecosystem, you can change this ecosystem, right? So if you really look at it as an ecosystem, it's not benefiting you unless you're at the top, right? There are ways to change this ecosystem, and it doesn't even have to all crumble, but there is ways to change this. But you have to be willing to get over the fear and stand up together to do it.
Because there is so many people, like I could write their names down and it would be pages and pages and pages of people that know that this is wrong. You know, I was speaking to my husband earlier about commerce in the assembly, how that was an issue in JSH's time. Now it's flipped round to the assembly is commerce. Look at this stuff. If you can't see it, you must be blind or stupid or thick, because people left over commerce being brought into the assembly. Or
they have these spokespersons that come out and they talk about how UBT is not affiliated whatsoever with their church. Yet when you go onto the UBT website, on the UBT website is a whole section of where they're selling hymn books and the canvases of the great leaders. There's this whole section of everything that is a part of the Brethren and the PBCC community that is being sold on the UBT. And
UBT is solely for Brethren. They don't do anything for anyone else. You've got UBTA, which is like the accountancy side of things. I'll go into a pie chart in a bit, but once you see it as black and white as it is, it is solely for Brethren. They can argue it as much as they want, but those that know and are not scared to tell the truth will tell you this is a Brethren structure. It's for Brethren only, and it's as we've seen in that email, the snippet of the email, it's to sustain their ecosystem so they can be separate from the world. Because I remember when the school shops were set up, they said about the mark of the beast is coming. And I believe it, where you'll have like a chip inside you where you can go and that's how you pay for your groceries. That's how you pay for this. That's how you pay for that. I mean, we're nearly there with our phones, aren't we? You can just tap your phone and that's your shopping paid for. But they say in the end, near the end, we won't be able to go in shops. So that's why Christians won't be able to go in shops. I don't know how they're going to work it, but anyway. And people will be knocking on the school shop doors because that's the only ones that they can go to. So they're trying to paint this picture that they are going to say, they are going to save the world because all the Christians in the world because they're the only ones with school shops. So then everyone's like really believing in it, and they take it in as this, we're going to change the world thing. And that's how they get so many people so interested in it. Well, it's obviously the school shop where their children go side of things. It's very, very clever. Anyway, back to the endowment fund. They raised 500 million from one seminar, which when it came out on the email, it was a strictly community only global ecosystem event. And then we've got, let me go back up. Yeah, so the directors of high profit, high donation businesses, so people that give donations out of the business profit to either the endowment fund or wherever they put it into schools, they are given what is known as in the Brethren as Levite kind of status. So once a year there's Levitical meetings held at the moment they're in Sydney. It used to be Leeds and all over the place, Brisbane, Melbourne. But at the moment they're in Sydney, and it was a more or less men only event, of which I've been to one of actually, because obviously I lived in Sydney. And it was just a mass of white shirts everywhere with 2 rows of sisters just around the outside balcony. It was like, ugh, the misogyny in here just reeks. So the only reason a sister would be there from outside of Sydney is if her husband was a close friend of Bruce Hale's. So that's the only way that sisters could have got into it. So it's basically like a big F off man holiday for those who had worked extra hard. And it's in ministry, in their ministry, about not going on boats. You wouldn't have meals out. All of a sudden they can do whatever the hell they want to do in this one week. There's boat trips with alcohol, there's like entertainment activities. I'm trying to think of an example. I think people went out to restaurants, and I remember a story. A man went out there and he had made a commitment years before that he would not ever go into a restaurant. And the rest of them went in there, and he stayed outside to make a stand because he made this commitment on the back of Bruce Hale's ministry that he would not go in a restaurant. Go to Sydney, right under Bruce Hale's nose with some of his family. They go in the restaurant and he stays outside. Like, the hypocrisy is just incredible. So that's what the Levite status is. And because they're given that status, they benefit from the system.
Yeah.
Then we've got the Grace Trust, which is the charity piggy bank, basically. So I think on some other podcasts, did someone speak about it, that they haven't actually put their accounts online or something? Or maybe it was a post on Facebook, I can't actually remember. But so it's really interesting in how they structure of how they've donated. So most of it is to say RRT, and then they've got the other charities within the Brethren, and then they've got like 0 point something percent is to say the Air Ambulance Society or something. So that's how they say, look, we're giving, and it's like £500. So
I remember a post like that they were talking about the little minuscule amount that they were actually donating, versus what they were putting back in their own pocket.
Which leads us on to RRT, which is the costly side of running this ecosystem. So you've got Bruce Hale's security team to keep him safe. Like, what from? None of us give a shit about you, mate. Then you've got the legal team, which would oversee any threats or attacks from outsiders. So you've got a team on constantly monitoring the exclusive Brethren Facebook pages for any like infringement of copyright things going on, or any any people whose businesses have been affected by the Haleses or UBT speaking out about it, they will try and nitpick for anything that they can get hold of so they can sue or counter sue or whatever they want to do. And you've got people who are monitoring those that come out with a sexual abuse allegation after they've left. So they will then try and pay them out or whatever they want to do, or put their thumb on them, or get that carpet up and sweep it under.
Or pay people to sweep it under a carpet.
Yes, exactly. Or they'll pay for someone to investigate people. I mean, we know that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's scary, the power they have, actually. And then I don't know why I've put this at the bottom of the list, really, because this should be at the top, because this is the RRT was set up at the beginning of the Charity Commission matter, as they put it, which I remember praying for years back, both the Charity Commission matter. Like, I was a kid then. It's just really sad. And this was set up to try to show to the Charity Commission that they are there for charitable causes. Now, if the Charity Commission saw what went on in the background, they'd realise that it was a massively, cleverly orchestrated PR stunt.
Yeah.
Now, I was around, obviously, in the time that the RRT progressed to be what it is now, where they're sort of shaking hands with MPs and stuff, and quickly get a snapshot of that. And as they're setting up the tent or whatever they want to set up, there's strict instructions of make sure you're in the most visible place to press, that you're in the most, like, the sign has to be in a certain place, in a certain position, and so that they can try and show what an incredible team they are. Now,
and another one of the instructions is to make sure that young people aren't out the front actually talking to those that attend.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't engage in conversation to any depth. I'd heard that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole thing is controlled from the minute that blinking RRT banner comes out to the minute it goes away. Which is super sad, you know. Let people talk. Let people, you know, it'd be good for young people to actually be challenged by these people.
Yeah, I think when it first started, and as I say, amongst the ex-brethren community, there was quite a lot of frustration at it. The one thing a few people did say is this maybe an opportunity for the younger men of brethren to get out there and talk to people in the world and actually engage and talk on a level. But then you slowly realise that wasn't allowed either.
No.
So that's not going to happen. So yeah.
If you started, you'd be called over. Oh, can you flip the burgers? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
There would be a task. They would be directed back to a task.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is controlled.
I think charitable work, the real charitable work, is done inconspicuously.
Yeah.
But no, they've got a big red, blue, flashy, top of the range, everything. And it's all just a big show. And people inside are also aware of that as well. But they get involved because, this is a bit of drama. It's a bit different from normal life. We get to miss meetings. We're going to help the firefighters. We're going to cook them burgers. And they're targeting the people who are the heavily emotionally taxed people, like firefighters. For example, Grenfell Tower. I can't even start to imagine some of the sights that those firefighters would have seen. And they would have been crippled emotionally, crippled mentally. And do you want a burger?
And they make them pose for pictures, right? Like I sincerely, I was watching a video just recently of the RRT in Vancouver at the hospital, and they were feeding all the nurses, and they were feeding them. And all these pictures, and I was sitting there looking at these pictures, and I'm like, how many of these nurses and doctors and all these people actually wanted to pose for a picture, right? I just don't get how this Christian community, so-called Christian community, can sit there and call this charitable work when we know it's just about the picture. It's just about the video. It's just about getting your name out there. It's sad. It really is sad.
Yeah. And for them to pick on the vulnerable, more vulnerable side is incredible. You know, they're not going to Africa to feed the poor little kids that, do you know what I mean? Yes, they did something for Ukraine, but again, that was a massive PR stunt because all were involved in Ukraine as well.
Yeah, do it because you sincerely want to give charity.
Yes.
If
and
you
because you
sincerely
really
want to
care.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. So I'm just going to check that I've covered all that. Yes, I have. So we've kind of covered this as well, but I just want to reiterate that seminar for the £500 million was set up as a community only global ecosystem event. So they don't want outside people to know, because outside people would clock like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And
do you know if that 500 million that was raised in whatever it was 2 days or whatever, was that just the UK part of it?
No, that was globally.
Okay.
So it was completely, So 500 million amongst around 50,000 people, including children.
Yeah.
It's just nuts amounts of money. So this is the pie chart that I was referring to. So this is really interesting, and it shows exactly how their ecosystem is working, or how I'd say Bruce Hales' business structure is working.
Yeah.
And this is from a Strive 23 team.
So at the top, of course, there's maintain our way of life. And it's really interesting that this is at the top, because that's everyone's priority. At the moment in the UK, there is, well, it's probably globally as well, but there's kind of like a financial crash going on. There's the interest rates have heightened for things like mortgages and loans and stuff like that. So people are really having to tighten their purse strings, and to be able to keep up the level of spending and the high level of their lifestyle, that's everyone's priority. I mean, how I can imagine sisters thinking, how am I going to afford to do a Lord's Day dinner? Like, because their food is so extravagant, so they're really going to have to cut back. So maintain our way of life. Underneath that, you've got UBC Household, One Medifund, Orbit, RRT, and Campus & Co. So UBC Household is mainly about how we're going to budget. What are the 12? I think I remember called like the 12 points of running a household. I don't know if I wrote it down, to be honest. 1 second. Yeah, a 12-point plan. I've got all my notes from when I was in there, you see. So you've got a 12-point plan of what to do when you're in financial struggles. In some of those 12 points, let's have a look. So like, you'd call a family meeting and go over what things are most important to you. And then you'd forensically look through each thing and say, what can we cut out, what can we keep, which is actually really important in a household. But the fact that they're telling you to do that to help you to survive in this ecosystem is just,
well, they're raking in $500 million in 2 days. And this goes along with where I've had reports from insiders and reports from principals and teachers where there's actually been people going to food banks. Like, this is what's so wrong about this situation, is that if you are this wealthy and you're asking, you've got this kind of money inside here, yet people from your congregation and flock are having to go to food banks. Yeah, it's just not right.
Yeah. It's sad.
It is
really
very
sad, because actually those people that are going to food banks don't want to out themselves that they're struggling, because then those that struggle are absolutely bullied.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I'll come on to the initiative they set up called Vision Welfare for those that are less wealthy / poor. I say poor, but in the non-brethren sense, they're not actually poor. They're just not, they just can't keep up the level of what everyone else is at up here. They're not poor at all. They're just less wealthy than the rest of them, but they feel poor because look what else they've got to compare it to.
Yeah, their ecosystem is very high demanding.
Yes. So that was, the Vision Welfare was set up. So they did a red button through UBC and they did a green button. So the red button was for households that are struggling to fill out a form and to be able to get vouchers for things like school shops, or so that they could do their food shop at the school shop, or they can get help from local brothers and dip into their knowledge of what they can do. I don't actually know if like checks were given, I don't know, or cash was given, I don't know. And then the green, oh, by the way, on the red button, it was said that it was confidential. Now, I was told by certain high up brothers in our locality who had pressed that red button in our locality. So the whole confidentiality thing is bullshit. It's complete bullshit. You will go onto a spreadsheet where the higher in the hierarchy will all get to see. I mean, when you fill in that spreadsheet, you put every single outgoing, every single income. So they know exactly where you're at. And you think it will just be for your local brethren? Get a grip. Everyone is looking at your personal household finance details. To me, that's really scary. And then it filters out into the community that your household is struggling. And then at this one school global, which is there to apparently protect and educate our young. I'm sorry, I just went like that to read it. That's when the children that are less wealthy will be bullied, because why haven't you got this and this and this? Look at your shoes, the soles are falling off. Like I had that at school. I was really badly bullied because my parents couldn't afford, well, they probably could, but they didn't buy me new school shoes. Maybe they couldn't afford them, I don't know. But I did, you know, my soles were literally falling off my shoes. And I got bullied for that. And the amount of wealth that's in there, you'd expect someone to pull you aside and be like, hey, shall we go shoe shopping?
Exactly.
You can get 500 million in 2 weeks. Someone can buy you a new pair of shoes. But no, instead they'll bully you. So I go on to One School Global. So this was set up way back by John Hales, I think. And there was a blueprint, but John Hales outlined how he wanted the schools to work, and Bruce Hales has taken that from his daddy and worked it all out. So the schooling as a whole is a very good schooling system, as long as you're not going to get bullied, you're not going to get sexually harassed, and you pretty much don't need to go to university, because they'll streamline you to be ready to go into brethren businesses. So it was set up to take the children away from worldly influence. And, you know, some of the things that are going on in non-brethren schools is scary now. Some of the stuff that's filtering through to education, I mean, I'll still take my children out of. But that's really easy to do, and that's an option with schools. But it's the overall things of videos and which brethren children are accessing now. But they just don't want the children to have access to the outside world, because they might be, they might want to be a doctor, or they might want to be a policeman, and so they'll take all the influences of the outside world away, so that they're more likely to keep the children within, and they'll get married, and then they'll breed, and they'll keep the ecosystem going. Sadly, there are high levels of sexual abuse in those schools, both between children and from teachers to children, as I've covered myself personally in my story. And there's also chronically high levels of bullying, like it's scary.
Yeah, the bullying is what we hear of the most. Like when I get emails coming in and phone calls, it is, everybody has that same theme of the hierarchy and the intense bullying. Yeah.
Oh, it's because you never get away from it.
Yeah.
You go to school, you're an hour on the school bus to get to the school. For some children, it's more. For some children, it's less. That's just an average. If your bullies are on your school bus, immediately you're double screwed, because you've got those extra hour in the morning, hour in the evening with those bullies. And then you've got, after that, I'm not sure if I covered this in one of my previous podcasts.
You did,
but
yeah.
Did I? Yeah. So basically, you can't get away from them at all. So the bullying is so much more intense. I had it said to me so many times, the bullying that you'd get in non-brethren schools is worse than this.
It's not.
It's not. Not by far. Because do you know why? Non-brethren schools are equipped and prepared to actually deal with it. No matter who your family is, what surname you've got, where in the hierarchical system you are, they will deal with it. They don't care about that. All they care about is the welfare of that child. There's one child in my local place that was bullied, and he was bullied for the most stupid yet nasty reasons. That child is going to suffer for the rest of his life because of the bullying. I remember one lad down in the south of England, and he was hung upside down out of windows and told, "Do you want us to drop you? Do you want us to drop you?" in 4-story high school. You're telling me that would happen in an outside school? Get knotted. Never. And if it did, those children would be removed immediately from that school.
And we had a conversation with an anonymous, very influential principal teacher that was in a very influential part of everything. And the stuff that she told us, like jaw-dropping, mind-blowing stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and the accountability, like that's the problem, is that these teachers can go out, like they especially if they're female, there's no accountability when they take this stuff to the higher ups that are supposed to be looking after this, because it just gets swept under the rug, because it's all these bullying kids' fathers who are on the board that you're taking it to. Well, that just nothing gets done with it, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely smack on.
Yeah, I wish I had my notes here from that phone call. I don't have them right here, but man, it deserved. Obviously, she had to stay anonymous, but the man, just the stuff that she had expressed to us, and the teachers that went missing, it's just crazy. It is really not a schooling system, right? It is part of their whole brainwashing part of their program, right? That's what its main thing is to do. That's why there isn't accountability. I've said this from day one, that this system is not broken. It's doing exactly what it needs to do to keep Bruce Hales at the head, at the top of his business.
Yes, absolutely. And when he carks it, it will hand down to whoever's got the most in the bank, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or whoever
So,
dukes it out the best. Yeah.
yeah. And
Go
on
ahead.
that point, I'm really miffed at the moment because, you know, inside he was the 7th elect vessel. So therefore the rapture was going to come before he died. Now he's just had heart surgery. So, you know, he's obviously a very poorly person. He could die tomorrow. Any of us could die tomorrow, but like, where's, you know, he's a 7th elect vessel. Where's the rapture? He ain't got that long left. Anyway, that's just a by the way.
And I mean, this is a whole other podcast on its own. We could go off and digress here, but I mean, for him to be as holy as he says he is, he should have never had these heart issues, right? That's my thinking, is that they should have never been there. If you are the holy man that you are, and I know that there's a lot of blame that's being placed on the brethren, right? That it's, you know, it's the stress they put on him and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, like that is not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, this man of God should be, if you are put in that position, you're believing that this is the position and this is all that it holds, and you should be able to handle all of it, including these ex-members who are now finally brave enough to come forward and be able to deal with it. If you're sitting in that throne position, you should have the capability and the capacity to be able to be dealing with it all.
Yeah. Or the people like me who wrote and tried to speak to him countless times about sexual abuse. You should be able to deal with those people.
Yeah.
Nah.
Just my opinion. I'm like, I don't believe in a man of God in an elect vessel anyhow, but I'm like, if you're going to take on that role, you know what it consists of. And you're saying you've had you had this mystical experience or whatever was said, that he had he talked to Jesus himself. And I mean, if you're having all of these capabilities, then you should be able to have the shoulders to be able to hold the load that's with that.
Yes. And I know we've completely digressed, but the new church that we went to, that we've been to since we left the Brethren, they did a study on Exodus 18 on the Sunday just gone. And Exodus 18 is about obviously Moses in the wilderness or when he left Egypt. And Exodus 18 sets out everything about what leadership should look like. And these are some of the points. Good leaders humbly respect others. Good leaders focus on what God has done, not what they have done. Good leaders are willing to change. Good leaders are wise about delegating. Good leaders appoint other good leaders. And good leaders point everyone else to the greatest leader, who is God/Christ. Now, if you look at those points and, you know, red flag alert, I looked at them after, and 5 out of the 6, he is not. And I've left number 2 out because sometimes he does focus on what God has done in his preaching. So that's only sometimes.
You know, I had somebody from inside message me recently talking about even the Lord's Supper on Sunday, for those that are not brethren, that is like communion. We like what regular churches communion, and how the focus has even been placed on Bruce at the Lord's Supper now, right? And how it really disheartened this person. And I'm sure he's not the only person, but it's just when you start taking God out of the church and placing a man, you are asking for trouble.
Yeah, I think it's blasphemy.
Absolutely.
I think it's actually against God to do that, because we've got Jesus, we've got the Holy Spirit, we've got God on our side. Why do we need someone else? We don't. So anyway, we've completely gone off topic. Let's get back to the topic. So then after the school, we've got improved profits of community businesses. Yeah, of course it is. So you've got UBT and UBTA. So UBT, as we've mentioned just now, their priority is to oversee, in my opinion, this is the whole of the Brethren immediate ecosystem. So you've got how to run a household, basically. And also in UBT, you've got how to run a business in the way that they think is best, which actually isn't necessarily. So, and then you've got UBTA, who have their own accountants for the Brethren businesses and also for UBT. And they will, yeah, mind blowing, isn't it? I can't imagine like the loopholes they try and get through. So their job mainly really is to reduce taxes and pay as less to the government as possible. That's basically what their job is. Then you've got fund education and welfare needs.
I don't know what NAF is. I've never heard of it before. So whether that's something that's been set up since I've left, I'm not sure.
I think the NAF is the National Assistance Fund, and I think they're New Zealand based, but I'm not 100% certain. It's a bit like Grace Trust somewhere else, I think, but don't totally quote me on that one. But I think it stands for National Assistance Fund, but yeah.
GFT, which is the charitable side of things. Grace Trust invests in the Vision Foundations. So the Grace Trust is making it possible to invest in 3 UK businesses this year.
Well, they 3 houses businesses, I wonder.
Most likely.
Yeah.
So they're using the Grace Trust money to invest in businesses. So the Grace Trust, though, is a charity in UK law. So how they're working that, I'm not sure. Surely that's against the law to actually be investing that money in businesses. I don't know, especially Brethren businesses. They are exceeding targets in Grace Trust campaigns. Here we go. So their funds are enabling us to continue supporting the community and hundreds of wider community charities next year. They're barely touching wider community charities, barely, it's like a couple £100 here and there. Most of it is supporting the PBCC. And then you've got the Vision Foundation, which is obviously covered, and Tiremax was set up years ago. And it's something to do with Trax tires. I don't know how they've worked it because I was never interested in it, but it was one of the first big global wholesale businesses, and it's got something to do with tires. I don't know the ins and outs.
I actually had a conversation with somebody who's associated with the PBCC. He was never a member. And I had a really long conversation. I remember Tiremax was brought up in it. And he was really focused on the Tiremax and how like wealthy it was and what they were doing with it. And I couldn't relay the whole story and message. It is on the list of things that need to be talked about in a podcast with someone that actually knows how to talk about that, because I didn't quite understand. But there was a lot of controversy in it, and I have my notes. And it's on the list to be talked about. So
yeah, well, it's on that chart for a reason. And I said to my husband, Max, why is it there? Like it's got to have some kind of significant importance, but I couldn't tell you why it's that significant and important, other than it being financially extremely beneficial to actually be put on the grand pie chart.
And there's a story around it that I wouldn't be able to relay it all, but I just remember being like, holy crap, I can't believe that happened. And I wouldn't be able to relay it enough to be able to be viable on a podcast. So we'll leave it for someone to come forward and be like, hey, I can explain that story, and then we'll bring them on.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we've got the elevation of circumstances sector, which obviously is the last bit on the pie chart, isn't it? Because you always start from the top. That's just how it works. So you've got the vision welfare, which I've covered already, which is making sure everyone can afford the Brethren lifestyle. You've got UBT Assist, and the two kind of integrate, apart from UBT Assist is more for businesses than households. And then you've got HR 100, which is basically advertising jobs for brethren only. So the 100 is to have 100% of the brethren employed. That's their target. Because, you can have anyone feeling left out. They might get a little bit disgruntled and leave. So that's there in place to make sure that employment is ticked. It's a bit of a tick boxing exercise. And then I just want sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to comment on the Orbit?
Yeah, so Orbit was set up, I can't remember exactly when. It's always been there lurking in the background, but it's been made more a thing of now with the Connect app, and that's run alongside Orbit. So if, for example, now if you want to go away, even if it's to your mum's 2 hours down the road, you have to inform Orbit. So your travel is monitored. Yeah. Especially if you want to go abroad. If you want to go abroad, you have to get like written permission from them that you can go abroad to see relatives, family, friends. Usually now, if people want to go abroad, it's only for business purposes. You wouldn't actually generally go abroad to see your family, because that would be Midianitish.
Wow.
Which I just think is completely bizarre.
And so in this app is you put all your information in, like when you're going to, I see.
And then when you go to fellowship meetings, it will be uploaded to the app where you're going for dinner, where you're going for tea, who you're staying with, and it will put all their contact details on the app. So it's literally like making your life easier, basically.
But they know.
And did I cover One Medifund earlier? I'm not sure if I did or not, but it's brethren only health insurance. So it's just health insurance set up for brethren. So you can see what an incredible business plan it is to oversee. I mean, I look at that and I think, where's Jesus in this? Where's the church in this? Yeah. Where's what actually matters in this? It isn't. You've just got money wherever you look. And that's one of the reasons we left, because we didn't agree with it at all. And this was a clipping from an email that was sent around to the locality in 2022. So there was a fundraiser set up for GFT, and it says, "Thank you for all the generous pledges made to GFT from both personal and business donors. As a campus," so this is one locality, one campus, "we've gone through our target of 1.7 million. You can read the rest of the numbers, and now have got 1.79 million. If that yet to finalise a pledge, any extra monies received above the target will certainly not be wastefully spent, as there are still many needs in welfare, external charities, and further RRT work. Let's keep the ecosystem moving. I'd like to remind anyone who has not managed to set up their direct debits for next year to do so now. Please bear in mind that any remaining payments for 2021 do not get cancelled when setting this up. This year is not quite finished yet.
Still more $1 million mansions to be bought.
Oh, yes. And it's all about, we need your money. We need your money constantly. We need your money. Like we used to pay, I think it was either £250 or £300 a month to GFT. And now I'm like, I want a refund, guys.
Now that I've left, I want back pay.
Yeah, like I can't, but that's how sucked into the system we were, because it's so mastermindfully clever that we were like, yes, we need to do this. And we were one of the guys that didn't give, like, that was pittance compared to what other people were giving. So I dread to think what other people were giving if we were nobodies.
Wow.
thousands and thousands of pounds. And then we received things like this. All on behalf of all the enterprises that we support, we'd like to convey grateful thanks to all of you who responded to the 2022 GFT campaign. The strong support we received resulting in hitting 103.5% of target. So not only was the target fully met, but also further substantial funds raised for the endowment fund. We cannot emphasize enough how thankful we are for every single donation. So 103.5% of target they met. So it's just nuts amount of cash floating around in there. For some, it's floating around. For others, it's really, really almost like sacrificial in some ways to actually be able to donate the amount of money that they are.
But also the much needed work of reaching out to mankind in need. Oh my days, get a grip. They don't give a crap. Like, take homeless people, for example. Now, people that are less than brethren, they will treat like rubbish. Homeless people, what are they? Ugh. Like, I have great respect for homeless people. They are fighting not only sometimes mental battles, but physical battles against living on the streets. And then some pompous brethren twit walks up and like, for example, I went out with a couple of people that were my age and they were like, why haven't you got a house? I'm like, are you joking?
That's just, I think I remember a quote once, all of us are only a few bad decisions away from homelessness. We don't know why people are there. Yeah. And as you say, the arrogance that they are somehow inferior. We don't know their story. We don't know why they're on the streets.
Right. And actually,
and to say that something like that to them.
Yeah, some of them are doctors that have got into family problems or like they have qualifications under their belt. They would have been financially stable at one point.
You never know somebody's story.
And a lot of them are people that have fought for our country.
Yeah. So get Bruce Hales talking to, because he's always banging on about John Hales in the army. So can you imagine Bruce Hales talking to someone on the street that was a veteran? No, So any that have missed the campaign, the door is never closed for donations and they'd be much appreciated.
There's a theme coming through here, Abby. There's a theme coming through here, isn't there?
There is. Subtle,
Please donate.
Oh my day.
Goes on about having covered the essential funding shortfall for 2022, the ability to support the endowment fund is a critical factor in becoming a sustainable community. That was rammed down everyone's throats. That the endowment fund, we're going to fail. We're going to have to give up our lifestyles unless we have this endowment fund to back us up. And then, so this was from, I think this was from like a UBT email address. I can't actually remember. But it goes on to thank people from each sector. So you've got One School Global.
Attracting, retaining and developing staff to ensure students get the best possible learning experience and graduate life ready. Oh, that just makes me sad.
That makes me sad. That makes me very sad.
They're not going to graduate life ready. They're graduating with tools to be able to combat life in a brethren business. But real life, real life, no.
No.
And the tertiary education that they do, a few people that have left have tried to use those qualifications to get, jobs, and they've been told they're not worth the paper they're written on, basically.
Really, that's so interesting, because most of them do a course called ABM, which is Advanced Business Management. None of these people are cut out to manage a business. My husband, I run a business, and if I put some of those people that do those courses in our positions, I'm not saying we're good at it, but they would absolutely be crippled. So yeah, that makes me sad, because they're definitely not ready for life.
No.
The resilience of our staff, parents and students throughout 2021, obviously that would have been throughout COVID and all the lockdowns and all that, has been appreciated. As we move to 2022, it will take forward the key learnings and successes in view of further delivering on the global vision. Now, COVID was interesting with one school, because apparently some of the top schools this is what was said amongst the brethren anyway, so whether it's true or not, I don't know, but apparently some of the schools were ringing up one school saying, you are ready for this, like for this COVID outbreak. You've got you already do self-directed learning, you've already got stuff in place for students to still be able to communicate with their teachers and learn when they're not at school. They were like, how did you do it? How did you know? And all the brethren were like, well, it's Bruce Hales, he knew this was coming, and such a miracle worker, and we're so grateful that he knew, so that our kids can continue education. And they took it as like, yes, look at us, we're being contacted by the best schools in the country about how we've figured this out. Whereas actually, I think self-directed learning is just a money-saving thing.
Yeah, it's always been in mainstream schools. It always has, and so has up to a point. So has virtual up to a point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of lessons in there are virtual.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I think it is a money-saving thing, because if you look at the One School Global brochures, they advertise that the students do virtual lessons for students from other campuses and even worldwide, and that's probably true. But if you put 50 pupils in front of a screen worldwide, with a lecture up on the screen, either narrated or whatever, that saves on teaching costs a lot.
Big time.
And
it's fun for the kids, because they're like, hey, look, there's so-and-so from so-and-so. And like, they're probably not actually listening to the lesson.
They're probably not. Yes. Yeah.
You're figuring out your life partner.
Yeah.
Doing school. Do you know what I mean?
And then it goes on to Vision Welfare. Thank you for them.
This was all part of the same email?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And this is how they'll filter scriptures in to help you feel good. So they've used Proverbs 22 verse 9. He that has a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he giveth of his bread to the poor. Well, how about that against the scripture that talks about the love of money being the root of all evil?
Yeah.
So they're picking and choosing which
they cherry pick their scriptures very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's clever. It's really clever, and it works. Vision Welfare continues its work to elevate people in need. They're not necessarily in need, okay? In the real world, those people in need in the brethren would be your middle class people. So they're not necessarily people in need in the real world. They're people in need to sustain the rich lifestyle that the brethren have. Relieve pressures on the widows. The widows do suffer. And then we go on to RRT. Whilst RRT is one cog in a big wheel, yeah, you're saying that, our outreach to mankind continues to be of all importance, and it's only possible with the kind pledges that we've received. 2022 is set to be an exciting year with new and existing initiatives. Right, who has, I mean, I don't know, but it just sounds, initiatives is a bit of a funny word when you've got all these other initiatives going on to be using in conjunction with RRT. Like, you don't want to let that out that it's an initiative, guys. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit sort of putting yourself in the shit there, isn't it, by using that word? Thank you for all your support, both financially and voluntarily. Smart Supporter Programme. Okay, I don't actually know what that is, but I presume it's for businesses to be able to donate directly to RRT. Because look how they've spelt smart.
Yeah, the smart
double R.
RRT in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the Grace Trust, which I covered a bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
With the wider charities. And then you have the Vision Foundation.
I think the Vision Foundation is their venture capitalist arm, isn't it? Where they invest in companies.
Right. Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
But that's my money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I donated to that.
Yeah.
I want to know where it's going.
Yeah.
But most just let them do what they want, what they know best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's that sort of blind trust, isn't it? Blind. Yeah.
So generous donations through the past years have enabled us to make significant investments in 3 UK businesses this year. They would have been Brethren businesses, obviously, and I expect Houses would have had their fingers in that pie somewhere.
Yeah,
and they wouldn't necessarily
this is
be
what
UK
I understand too, is that it's not necessarily, they really pick and choose which businesses get that money.
Yes, very much so. And also the business may be registered under a slightly different name or just registered as the UK branch, but actually it originated in Sydney. Obviously, you've got things like Ox Group, which is Dean's business in Sydney, but then you've got the Ox Group UK. So it looks like it's completely separate to an outsider, unless they dig deep. And it's probably a bit hard to put 2 and 2 together, unless you know.
Abby, could you go back to the second slide on that presentation where it says what the brethren buy from UBT? I just want to bring up how this shows that they are being totally ripped off. If you go down to the Trove Music app, could you explain that for us?
Yeah, so the Trove Music app was, I think, the £64.90 is actually for a gospel hall. Sorry, it should have been on a different bullet point. So the £64.90 is for a gospel hall recording. So in some meetings, like Bruce Hales said, there would never be any musical instruments in meetings, and all of a sudden there was. Wow, shock factor. And the bands that played then went to a studio and they recorded these 12 songs, which some were hymns and some were Bruce Hales' favourites.
So these are Brethren members playing in the band. It's not so Brethren playing the guitar, playing keyboard and so on. Yes.
And for £64.90 plus VAT, you could buy those 12 songs that were recorded.
The reason I wanted to point that up is that, obviously out here we have Spotify, and for like $5.99 a month, you get unlimited songs of, and yet you're paying £64.90 for 12 songs.
Which would have probably sounded absolutely shit.
Yeah.
Because the Brethren that you were playing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there is some serious skill in there.
Serious.
And there's hidden talent that will never be found because they're Brethren.
Yeah.
My husband being one of them, you know, he could have been famous if he was, you know, if he was led down the right route, you know, he's an incredible musician. And brethren know that, but it would have never been, wow, this lad has talent. Like,
let's nurture it. Let's,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that was something that was brought out as we were leaving, so I never actually heard them. Not I would have wanted to. I didn't ever buy anything.
No.
Like,
no, I just wanted to point out, you know, how they are being totally ripped off.
Yeah. So that's that presentation. I'll stop share now. So that gives you an overview of, I love that pie chart. It's just groundbreaking.
And I mean,
good.
for them to have something like that on an email, it's just like, it was just like handing us this piece of gold that said, like, here, this is how we run it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But to an outsider, they'll deny that. They won't be like, no, what's this? Because they're so good at lying.
And I think that's the biggest frustration of all of this, is the incredible amount of lies that they cover up. They sit there and they talk about the opposers and these attacks and everything that comes on as that we're lying. I guarantee you, like 100% of us are sitting here trying to bring out all of this truth to, like, come up against all their lies. There's something that happened just recently that's really, really gotten inside my heart. And it's this whole praying for the removal of people. I want to talk about, it's just the bullying. I just got to backtrack into the bullying a little bit, and like how their bullying is such an issue. The bullying is just, like, I've never seen anything like it in the outside world of how much bullying and where it all stems from. And I mean, I knew of this, right? I mean, you know, you hear and you forget things, though, right? When they pray for the removal of things. But I'm only addressing this now is because we're at an all-time high with everything that is coming forward and coming out. And I'm not going to lie, we've had death threats come this way with understanding now what they're meaning by these threats. And I just want to let those insiders know that sit back and look at the work we're doing as this absolute attack on you. It's not. It is absolutely not. It's just a matter of cleaning up what's been shoved underneath the carpet. And the biggest bomb that you can throw on top of this carpet is sitting back after looking at how big the carpet is and then start praying for the removal of those that have left. And I just want to give people what removal means when people pray for the removal. They're praying for our death. So on Monday night prayer meeting, when they're praying for the removal of certain people, that is that they're removed off the planet, right? That is their way of praying for the death of people. This is what they've stooped to. And obviously, since we've started this podcast and we've had certain people come onto this podcast, and we're revealing very potent information, that is not Christian-like. You do not get up in prayer and ask for the removal of somebody. You just don't. And it has really ignited something in me that I just can't figure out how my parents don't see through that, how my siblings don't see through that. You don't get up and pray for the removal of somebody. That's not your job. You don't pray to God for them to remove somebody, especially somebody who's been completely sexually molested and abused. You just don't pray for that. Instead, a Christian would get up and pray for the help that person needs to restore themselves back to sanity. Like, it's just, I guess it's this whole mind-blown thing of, after we had some stuff come our way, that I'm like, no, we need to address this. We absolutely need to address this. And yes, authorities are going to be involved. And we don't take this lightly. I do not take this lightly when comments get placed on things. And when you're telling somebody that they're going to be dead in a year because Bruce Hales has a track record of that, no, not going to stand for it.
I think it's all part of their brainwashing process that those that leave are evil.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been as close to Jesus and to God as I am now. Once I've left that abusive system and had some time out to think about where I stand between me and God without all the bullshit, I'm not an evil person.
Yeah.
I just want to bring out the truth of what happened to me, bring out the truth of what's happening to so many children in there, bring out what's happening to adults. And, you know, frankly, someone that sits behind a keyboard and types, "You're going to be dead in a year," is just a coward. I don't believe in their threats. I remember.
No, and I mean, you can't. I mean, it's just.
Well, it's
crazy.
Murderous. The Bible
It's
speaks
ridiculous that they actually believe that Bruce Hales can do this. That's the whole thing. It's just absolutely like insane that they think that Bruce has this power. He doesn't. He doesn't have this power. I guess my biggest warning with all of this is that they need to be careful of what they're teaching their young, because there are young in there that might get ideas that are very, very unhealthy, that are going to stem from what they're teaching those kids to stand up and do. And most ex-brethren say that, right? That once they leave, I remember saying that to my parents, that what I hold in my heart today is so sacred to me and can never be taken away from anybody. And I only found that after I left. I never found that in there, right? It's just, the bullying is so potent in there. For myself, scary. I agree. Like I completely relate to you in that sense. I just want some peace. Why does religion have to have such a force of division in it? Why can't religion should be the thing that is sending out love? It's sending out a hand. It's sending out peace. It's sending out care and compassion. And it should be the thing that ties everybody together, not deviates and separates and wishes such horrible things on people, right? To me, that's just what my heart wants. I just want some way where we can all be at peace somehow. And I mean, I understand that we live life. Life has turbulence. Life has its ups and downs. But this is absolutely out of this world. It's insane with what we have our hands in now. It's just absolutely insane. It shouldn't be happening. And it should not be happening under the umbrella of Christianity.
No, it's because it's the furthest thing from Christianity. So there was a couple years ago, there was almost like a presentation in the foyer. And a foyer is like the cloakroom of a meeting room, but it's like big. So all the brethren came out of the main hall into the foyer, and there was loads of chairs sat out. And we had this like presentation thing on people that are against us. And then afterwards, we all signed a document saying that we didn't want to be contacted by 3 people. One of them was Lance Christie. I can't remember who the other 2 were.
Richard Marsh?
Possibly. I can't
remember some people signed. We do have some people that have said that they signed something saying that they would never contact Richard Marsh too.
No, I think that it was rather that they didn't want to be contacted by them.
Okay, yeah.
But whichever way round. Now, I made a song and dance of it. I was like, yes, let's sign this paper, because I was completely sucked in then. But there were people loitering around the back of the foyer that you could tell didn't necessarily want to sign anything. But then because everyone was looking at them, they felt obliged, and that's why they held it in the foyer. They weren't going to go around household to household to household. They were going to do it in the foyer,
in public.
So
Intimidation, hey?
Yes. So that you would be singled out if you did not sign that piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of stuff goes on in there like that when intimidation is used to kind of discreetly, subtly force you to sign a piece of paper that you don't necessarily want to. So that's another part of the whole bullying aspect. I was sent a snippet today of, I can't remember what it was called. 1 second.
The sad thing is these people, I mean, like, you know, you just freshly out can relate to that. Is like you get so sucked into the drama of it all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of a story where like somebody in there actually who had prayed for the removal of somebody felt so bad, called up this person who was out and cried about it to him, like that, like I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want. They felt bad. Like it's just. That's the scary part of all this, is because they believe it so much, right? It's just toys with their heart and mind that I really think Bruce and his minions need to be careful. They need to be very careful, or they're going to have something on their hands that they don't want on their hands.
I think they already have.
Yeah, I know, but
they really have. If they're not shitting their pants, they should be.
Yeah, they should be.
Because it gets to a stage where you can't actually pay a lawyer to deal with this crap anymore.
No.
You have, especially, I think there's going to be very much an uprising from inside. Bruce Hauser said that there won't be another Aberdeen. Maybe that's because he's not really into women in bed with him other than his wife. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think it will happen the way that it did in Aberdeen, right? I do believe that there will be an upheaval, right?
Yes.
I just
will get sick of it.
Yes, I just hope that it is as smooth as it can be. I just think of my parents that are in there and my siblings and nieces and nephews, and you want it to be the least kind of tumultuous that it can be, right? Because this isn't, again, we say it again, this isn't about bringing the PBCC down. It's about getting the change to happen inside there that needs to happen, right? Yeah. Like the pedophilia, the sexual abuse has got to be taken care of. The bullying needs to be taken care of. The hierarchy needs to be taken care of. The money needs to be taken care of. It needs to be returned back to just a Christian church where people go to for help and for care and for compassion and to remember what love and light is all about.
And family.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, without all the doctrine, if I took just the bare scriptural, if it was just the bare scriptural stuff, then I probably wouldn't have left. It's when the scriptures are starting to be twisted and twisted and twisted to suit their agenda, I'm not interested. Like the church we go to now is about scriptures. It's purely about scripture. But it links to this core doctrine legal document that was written by Bruce Hales, and this was something that was sent around and had to be signed about 8 to 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, because obviously I wasn't married then, and I've never signed it, thankfully. But point 7, no action should be taken in any way to treat vindictively, maliciously, or unfairly persons, whether within or without the community, including those who were within the community and who are leaving or have left the community. Every care should be taken to provide for and support the welfare and education of children and young persons within the community. Where persons seek to leave the community, reasonable assistance should be afforded to them in terms of support and/or financial assistance relating to employment or other matters, where they have been dependent on the community for that support. Reasonable steps should also be taken in these cases, consistent with and subject to any legal requirements applying to the persons involved and the human rights of the person. Human rights they don't even know what the definition of human rights is. To allow the continuation of the family relationship where a family member has left the community, including providing access to family members, in particular children. Where a person within the community dies, the principle of separation allows members of the extended family of the deceased, including former brethren, to attend their funeral service. Any people attending a funeral service, whether from within or out the community, should respect the wishes and beliefs of the deceased, behave with dignity, and be treated considerately. So, praying for someone to be removed is against what most people will have signed in this document about no action being taken in any way to treat vindictively, maliciously, or unfairly people that have left the community. And also the bit about allowing continuation of family relationships where a member has left the community, including providing access to family members, in particular children, that is a complete load of bullshit. My child has not seen his grandparents since more or less since we left. Bruce's parents haven't seen us. We haven't heard from them in months and months and months. And we're okay with that, you know, if that's how they want to treat us, fine. Not fine, but that's how we're dealing with it right now. Mm-hmm. But these documents that they put together and fabricate to make it look like it's not as it is, it's just disgusting.
And I think, like, for myself, I came in and out of communicating with my parents and my family. And I mean, obviously, when things got very tumultuous with my husband, was another time when I reached out, and I needed a mom. I needed a mom so badly. But the thing is I couldn't get the mom I needed, because the mom I needed was so indoctrinated. And I actually had to let go and say goodbye, because I couldn't deal with what I was getting.
Yeah. It's actually easier sometimes to have nothing to do with them.
I had to, for my own sanity, I had to. And I grieve that every day, because what I was getting was not my mom. What I was getting was Bruce Hales's indoctrination of what a mother should be. Yeah. And I
think they probably find it as painful. But
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're brainwashed to think that we're basically dead to them. We're dead to the Lord. We're dead to everything that we've ever known. We've turned our back on the lights, or light, or whatever they used to say. And actually, I feel I've completely come into the light. I've realized what I was a part of. Mm-hmm, and our family have realized what we were a part of. And actually, the blindfold has been taken off. Yeah. And we're seeing it for real. And
I think that's why we fight so hard here, right? This is why we're doing what we're doing. Yes. For me, I do it because I hope one day that there's enough stuff that's come forward where all of a sudden either a sibling or a niece or a nephew or a mother or a father all of a sudden is like, okay, like, I've heard enough. I'm done. I didn't know that this was happening. And a lot of people don't know that this is happening, right? I mean, I have talked to people that I left with, and in the age group that I left with, that give stuff back to their parents, and their parents are like, that's not, the Haleses never bought any $1 million mansions. No, they didn't. That's not true. Like, they literally believe that is not true. So though your average person within the PBCC do not understand what is happening, and they don't have access to these articles, right? They don't have access to any of this because their UB2 phones don't get them. And those very law-abiding PBCC members don't have those non-UBT phones, right?
No.
And, you know, it's just sad. It breaks my heart. That's what breaks my heart, is that I want my parents so badly. They're such good people. They are such good people. Yet they are so indoctrinated by Bruce Hales's fear.
And they'll also be tainted because you've left.
Yes, and now because I've spoken out is, you know, it's even worse now that I've spoken out. But you know what? I think, Abby, this is why we do what we do. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that you have taken the amount of hours that you have taken in podcast material and given us such a thorough look into what's happening, right? You are one of the most recent leavers that we've had, and we literally have gone from point A to point Z. And I'm looking forward to the information that comes back from ex-members and from insiders once we put this podcast out, and be able to collaborate a little bit more, because it always happens to that. This is just a piece of the breadcrumb. I know these podcasts are divinely guided. We go from breadcrumb to breadcrumb to breadcrumb. They always just line up. There's really not that much work we have to do in lining things up. So my heart just goes out to you. My heart goes out to all the pressure that you've had to put yourself under to get this all up and going. And
to be honest with you, it's come from my heart. It's come from a place of wanting change, because I know of so many people that are suffering in there, and so many people want to escape, but they can't because they're part of this ecosystem, which has been their whole life. And I just want to say there's a whole nother beautiful, still Jesus-filled life out here that is truly Jesus-filled, not an elect vessel filled. And we are free. We are really, truly free. They speak about being free in the brethren. No, this is a different kind of free. This is an I have found my wings free.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to fly. You can try and put me down. You can try and pray for whatever. I am free. And
it feels the entire body, right? Like it's just, I'll remember the first time I ever felt it, where I was like, this is what life feels like. This is what being connected to it all is. This is what it feels like. And that's when I said to my mom, like, there's no, I would never put myself back in that situation to lose this part of my spirit, to lose this part of my soul, because for once I now feel the love of it all.
And it's just
there.
beautiful.
I didn't. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. I still grieve very heavily for my family. I do. It is, but I use it as fuel to put in this change that needs to happen. Well, thank you so much. For those
that are inside, I also want to say that there is a social media team that has been created who are constantly watching your likes of Instagram, your Facebook, your this, your that, and constantly monitoring who's following who. So if you want to break out and you want to go on one of these social media platforms, well, just set your account to private. Whatever you're in, just set it to private so that they can't see your followers.
You can do a fake name, like you can do these other names. I have a lot of people who message me with alternative names, and then private message me with who they are and what's going on. So that is a way to get into contact. And I do have to really stress the Olive Leaf Network. It's oliveleaf.network, which is a website that Lindy and a huge team have put together. Utilize that website. It is a super important website to get inside. There's so many resources. At the end of our podcast, it's not an updated resource list of books. There's so many books out there that I have realized that are out there and I didn't know. So please utilize the oliveleaf.network website and all the resources that are on there and the way that you can contact people from off that website. It's all discreet.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, that's brilliant. And there are people that will break free.
Yeah.
I know that there are. and I believe in them. And we've just got to hope and pray that they find true freeness. No, freeness, freedom.
It's all the same, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Abby. It was so great to have you here. I am so excited to get these podcasts out, and I'm sure you'll be no stranger to the show.
Well, Abby, all I can say is thank you so much for this evening. It's been absolutely fascinating, to listen to your story, which I genuinely think you're really brave to tell so soon after leaving. And I'm sure good will come from that. But secondly, to explain to us your perception of how things are in the PBCC, bearing in mind you're such a recent leaver, has been absolutely fascinating. And if the PBCC are a mainstream Christian church, they shouldn't have anything to hide. They shouldn't be ashamed of their ecosystem or anything like that, should they? They should be saying it's wonderful. We've got this sussed, guys, But
the global warming is going to get very hot when they realise their ecosystem is where it's headed for. But
it's been interesting to get up to date with, everything that's going on inside there as well, with all the different bits and bobs.
Yeah. And also how it felt being inside so recently, particularly during COVID times, I think. And because we've often said as outsiders, the COVID times must have made quite a difference, because suddenly you don't have a meeting every night. And then it sort of comes back, but they can't control it quite the same, although they try. And whether that'll change things long term, who knows? That's all we want is change. Yeah. You're welcome with us anytime, Abby. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.